Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's book review. So it's been a very snowy week this week up here in Northumberland, and I know lots of other parts of the country have had lots of snow as well. So it's a good chance to stay indoors and do lots of reading. So this week I'm going to be looking at this book here. So this is The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. And it's one I've been wanting to read for a while and finally got round to it. So this one's quite interesting because it's gained quite a following over the past few months. It secured a film deal with Steven Spielberg already, even though it only came out a few months ago. And it's also been turned into a BBC radio play that you can listen to on BBC Sounds. I've not listened to it yet, but I probably will do. And it's quite interesting. So it's a bit different, this one, because it's written by a well-known celebrity, Richard Osman, the TV show host from Pointless, and also Richard Osman's House of Games. Now, I think celebrities are also usually targeted quite unfairly if they write a book, because you think, oh, they're already famous, and so they've got this book deal because they're famous. But I think in Richard Osman's case, we should give him some credit, because this is actually the fastest selling debut crime novel of all time, and also secured the #1 spot at Christmas last year. So if he's just a celebrity who wrote a book, would he really have got that far? I think he's actually a really good writer, and I'll see what you think about it if you read it too. So let's have a look at the cover of the book. Now, I actually really like this cover because it's very eye-catching with the red and the cream, and it's hardback as well. So I prefer hardbacks to paperbacks, so they're easier to hold, and also they're not going to fall apart as easily. So it's got the look of a classic crime cover. I don't know why, but crime covers are always so much easier to tell apart than others. They've just got certain features. So, for example, they always have the author's name in big letters right at the top. Maybe it's because there's such a popular genre, and it means that people can pick them out straight away, their favourite authors. So they always have that, and then the title underneath. Now, if it's really dark crime, it's usually a picture of a silhouette in I don't know, a street scene or something like that. If it's medium crime, it's usually detective like Vera, it's usually a landscape. And if it's more cozy crime, it's often cartoony. So this one, it's cartoony font, and we've got a picture of a fox. Now, I'm not actually sure why the fox is on there, or a dog, I'm not sure what it is, because it plays no part in the story whatsoever. If you know what it means, then please put it in the comments below, because I'd love to hear it. But overall, I think it's quite a nice cover. And we've got some comments on the back as well from some other authors. So what they've thought of the book, and it's to draw you in and make you want to read it. And then on the inside of the cover, we've got lots of the foxes. And we've got a bit about the book as well, the blurb there. But overall, I think it's quite a nice cover, and it's very eye-catching. Anyway, the book tells the story of a group of pensioners who live in the idealistic little retirement village of Cooper's Chase, which is meant to be in Kent. And Richard Osman actually based this on a real retirement village they went to visit. And I love that it's based on a real place, because if you go and visit there, or you actually live there, you're like, oh, I actually live in Cooper's Chase, and it's real. So it's based on a real place, and every Thursday, this little group of pensioners in this retirement village in the book, they meet in the jigsaw room under the false booking of Japanese opera discussion. It means that they're by themselves because nobody else is going to want to join, and they can discuss unsolved murders, and they go by the name of the Thursday Murder Club. So when a couple of actual murders do happen almost under their own roofs, they decide that they've got to try and solve the case. And they're going to try and do it before the police can, and take the law into their own hands. So in some ways, this is a classic amateur sleuth story. It's a group of normal people trying to solve a mystery before the police can, and do it in their own way. But this group really is far from normal. It's made up of 3 original members of the Thursday Murder Club. You've got Red Ron Ritchie, who's a former trade union leader, and he's a bit of a rebel, and has had a history of protest and argument against the government. You've got Ibrahim Arif, who's a retired Egyptian psychiatrist, and he's got a fascination with numbers, and also keeps all his old patient files to look through in case they come in handy. and you've got the mysterious Elizabeth. Now, we never find out Elizabeth's surname, but she's described like the godfather of the group. She's the one who is in control of everything and has a vast network of connections and isn't afraid to break the law or do what needs to be done in order to solve the mystery. Now, there's another character who joins them called Joyce Meadowcroft, who's a retired nurse. And what's quite clever is she comes in and the story begins just as she's introduced to the group and is asked to join. So her joining the group is actually the first time that the reader joins the group as well. So it means that we're introduced at the same time and it's like a gentle easing into the story, and we get to see things through Joyce's perspective. And you learn more about the characters as the story goes on and hear about their love lives. Yes, pensioners' love lives, and their past lives, and more about them as the story goes through. So I love that the characters in the story are all pensioners, and even though some elements of the story are pretty far-fetched and you think, really, would that really happen? It just makes the story all the more enjoyable. And I think what Osman beautifully shows is how diverse and different the older population can be, and we shouldn't put them in a box because they can be very surprising and different to what we expect. And it's a theme that runs through the book, that you shouldn't take anyone for granted or underestimate what people are capable of. And the group aren't afraid to break the rules or use their wiles to get what they want. And this makes the story really laugh out loud funny. Just some parts where they do things that you really wouldn't expect an older person to do. In a way, it sort of reminds me of the book The 100-Year-Old Man Who Climbed Out the Window and Disappeared, and that's by Jonas Jonasson. And that's also, it's similar lines of an older person doing things you really wouldn't expect and having a crazy adventure. But if you like that sort of thing, I would really recommend it. So some other major characters in the Thursday Murder Club are the policemen. So we have PC Donna de Freitas, who's a young cop on her first major case, and DCI Chris Hudson, who's described as an overweight loner. And these two sort of become unwittingly part of the Thursday Murder Club's investigation, and they try to gain information from them in any way they can to try and solve it before them, and use their wiles to gain the information, including being plied with lots of Joyce's home baking. So what's really interesting is the viewpoint in the story actually switches constantly through the book. So half of the chapters are written in first person present tense. Now I think that's quite unusual because often books are written third person past tense. I know I've talked about this before with other books, but I think this viewpoint gives it such a sense of immediacy because it's happening that moment, and it means you don't know what's going to happen, and anything could actually happen in the story because it hasn't happened before, if you see what I mean. And what's quite interesting is they often end the chapters on a cliffhanger, and then suddenly the next chapter is a completely different viewpoint, and often that viewpoint is Joyce's, and these chapters are written as a diary entry, and I'll talk about those in a moment. But it's interesting because often you have to wait between chapters to find out what's happened, because the next chapter that person might not know what's happened in the chapter before, so you sometimes have to wait over a chapter to find out what happened in that major cliffhanger, and it makes you really want to read on. It's a good way of propelling the story forward. So in Joyce's diary chapters, we hear from her at the end of each day, and these are just short little chapters, and she informs us what's been happening, and also gives her viewpoint on maybe some things that we've already heard about, but also some bits that haven't been told anywhere else, extra bits of gossip, including gossip of residents in the village, which is quite interesting and quite entertaining. And I love these chapters because they're so natural sounding, and it is like an actual diary entry, and Osman isn't actually afraid to correct her as she goes along. So she might make a mistake when she writes something, then later on in the diary entry she amends it and says, oh sorry, I mean this, I wrote it wrong earlier, and it makes like a proper diary entry and makes it sound so natural. and she always promises to inform us what'll happen next and say, oh, I'll let you know about this tomorrow. And so in the next diary entry, you know you're going to hear about that. She also tells us exactly what she's doing at the time. So whether it's baking a pie or if Elizabeth is going to be calling round to go off on an adventure, she'll tell us about it. And it does give us that real sense of immediacy, like it's actually just happened or just happening. And Joyce as a character is a bit like the book's grandma. She seems to be all nicey nice and the one that you'd really like to have as a grandma, except she's got the added bonus of belonging to a murder solving club as well. So as well as being laugh out loud funny in lots of places and showing what would happen if pensioners made their own rules instead of always following the law, Osman does deal with some more serious issues as well, and I think he does this really well. So one of the major things he looks at is loneliness. I think this is one of the key themes in the book, really. So the character of Bernard is one who clearly demonstrates this. He's Joyce's love interest, and he's just recently lost his wife, and it's all about how he deals with being by himself. But this is sort of supplemented by the character of DCI Chris Hudson, who's a lot younger guy, but he's also dealing with loneliness. He's living by himself, but he's wishing to have a family, and it's how he deals with not having this and being by himself. So both these characters, even though they're from completely different backgrounds, are both dealing with the same issue. Now, another issue that's dealt with in the book is dementia, and it's one that a lot of older people struggle with. So this adds a lot of realism to the story, and you see as the book goes through how some of the characters have to deal with this in their relationships and how it affects them as the story goes through. And I think this just makes the story all the more real and adds like a serious element to it, as well as having all of the comedy. So overall, I actually really loved this book. It's one of the best things I've read in quite a long time. I think it's just the mix of the absolutely laugh out loud hilarious elements, but also the more serious bits as well. And it just gives it a good balance. It's not too funny, it's not too stupid, it's just a good mix. And there's lots of loose ends that need tying up. And it has been promised a sequel. It's actually written in the back of the book that a sequel is on its way. I can show you that here. It says The Thursday Murder Club 2 pre-order now. So the second one is on its way, and you can also sign up to a newsletter as well at the back to get more information and prizes and gossip and things apparently. Not sure if I'll sign up, but I'll definitely read the second book when it comes out, and I'll be very interested to see the film as well, and see how Steven Spielberg deals with it and how he adapts it for the screen. So that's this week's review. If you'd like to leave your comments below, please do, and I'll join you again for another one very soon. Bye everyone.